Hi, Jeremy here, Modern Vitality. In today's video, I'm going to explain to you why healing from a complex chronic inflammatory illness is like baking a cake. I'm serious. I'm not going to oversimplify this. We have to respect that these conditions are complex and multifaceted, but the way the establishment, the medical system has made it, they're overcomplicating this thing. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that in this video, so that if you're dealing with a complex chronic health condition like fibromyalgia or Lyme disease, any kind of autoimmune issue, chronic fatigue syndrome, adrenal fatigue, candida, reactivated Epstein-Barr, there's a ton of these things. Long haulers. Did I say Lyme disease already? Did I say mold toxicity? It keeps coming. There's more and more of these things happening to us. You might find you have POTS, SIBO, right? We start to get all the initials, the alphabet soup kind of conditions. Again, anything with autoimmune component. These are seriously complex conditions. And if you're dealing with that, you want to be able to get your life back. You want to be able to start having fun. You don't want to have to be doing research all the time, trying to be your own doctor all day long. You don't want to have to see 10,000 different professionals. I get it. So at the very least, in this video, I'm going to give you the paradigms we use to start to break down the complexity and start to make things a little more straightforward so that you can organize yourself a care plan and start getting your life back. All right, let's get started. Okay, what do I mean about baking a cake? Well, first we need to start and explain this analogy, because once you really understand modular thinking and how to look at things in a systems way in terms of something familiar like baking a cake, then you'll be able to understand your body in the same way too. I promise. We're going to have a lot of carryover here. So when you bake a cake, there are different ingredients, right? What goes in a cake? Eggs and flour and like sugar, right? Something, probably butter in there, milk, all these things you mix together, right? All the ingredients. And then there's various other things you could put in, like some cocoa powder or whatever's in carrot cake. You know, there's different kinds of textures you want your cake dough to be, and you mix all that stuff together. What is it? Batter, dough, something like that, right? Whatever the stuff is, you pour it in a pan, and now you've got a different type of cake, depending on all the little variables you've had. And how many different cakes can you think of, right? There's like chocolate cake and angel food and carrot cake and whatever else kind of comes to mind. Those are the official ones, right? The most popular kind of versions of this, the most popular combination of variables in terms of how many eggs and what other thing are you putting in? You know, are you adding some whatever, shaved carrots, whatever goes in there, right? Are you adding these things in? You're going to get something different. And there are certain combinations that are kind of famous and have names, right? Like a carrot cake or devil's food or whatever, right? There's all these different things. It's the same when you go to get a diagnosis for a health condition. Oftentimes, what a physician is looking for is one specific type of cake, right? So if you have something on a plate and you go, oh, I know what this is. This is carrot cake. This has all the defining features of carrot cake. This is carrot cake, right? I got an answer. But if you made a carrot cake and like put a bunch of chocolate in there too and all that, it's kind of somewhere between, and you're going to have a harder time diagnosing which type of cake that is, right? And this happens a lot with our complex chronic health conditions because people want a diagnosis for a lot of reasons. And I understand it's totally valid what's happening here, because for one, you're like, hey, am I crazy? Because this isn't something I'm figuring out as a name, right? What's going on with me? Am I weird? Am I broken? What is this? Am I making this up? Is it all in my head? Other people are like, hey, it's all in your head. You're trying to find a way to validate your experience because for whatever reason, other people haven't validated your experience enough, right? So you go, okay, I need a diagnosis. We need to make sure that what's going on is real. And then the other reason is because a diagnosis is supposed to help you get better, right? That's really the main goal for most people. I need to find out what's going on here so we can fix it. And oftentimes, a lot of these diagnoses, the more complex the condition, the less likely the diagnosis is going to lead to any kind of treatment, unfortunately. And I know like this is the bad news, but you're on my channel. Most people that come here and are watching these kind of videos already know this. They've already realized that the conventional medical system with these complex diagnoses does its best and can be very helpful in some situations, but oftentimes just leaves a lot wanting, especially in terms of when you look at the long-term dependence cycle that's happening. By dependence, I mean, are you going to continue to be more and more dependent on a medical intervention over time? Or are you working towards medical independence, which makes you less dependent on a medication over time? And the reason why you can do that is only if your body's getting stronger, right? So if you're actually healing from inside, then you're going to be less dependent. You won't need the crutches, right? So you start looking at your medical treatments, go, wow, this complex diagnosis doesn't really come with an easy solution. There's not a pill to pop to take away fibromyalgia or Lyme disease or to wake up chronic fatigue, right? There's not just like one magic pill. And the reason why is, again, because of definitions and how we're looking at things. A lot of these names of disease diagnoses, it's like the names of a cake, right? So they're trying to fit you in a box. Is it carrot cake? Is it chocolate? It's kind of both. Let's check for RA and rule out an autoimmune condition. And if it's not that, let's just call it fibro, right? Or let's check for Lyme, but we don't really have testing that is 100% accurate. Gives false positives, gives false negatives. So we'll kind of shoot for that. And if it looks roughly positive, then we'll call it Lyme, right? And when in doubt, we'll call it mold, or we'll call it all in your head, or whatever it is, right? Sometimes it really is mold, which I'm not even gonna get into that in this video, because that's a monster topic. You can see some of my other videos for that. So anyway, that's how they're naming your conditions, right? And think about the cakes, okay? Sometimes it is a carrot cake, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's something in the middle, and they're just calling it a carrot cake. Right? So of course, doing carrot cake treatments on it isn't going to quite work because it's not really a carrot cake. Am I making sense? Right? We're talking about a lot of cake in this video, but this is how we have to start looking at it. I want to bring you a whole new lens, a whole new paradigm, a whole new way to solve problems that you can apply to your own health. And that has to do with taking a look at not just the end product and trying to fit it into a box, right? Hello, human. Oh, you're going in the fibromyalgia box, right? Or hello, this must be a carrot cake. We're not going to try to fit it into a box. Instead, we're going to look at what it's made of. We're going to look at the underlying systems, right? And then we're going to look at the results that we're getting and the disharmonies and how that can be coming from upstream in these other systems of the body. And this is where we start to get the difference between diagnosing syndromes, right? A syndrome is just a cluster of symptoms that tend to point at something, right? By the way, if you have a disease diagnosis that has syndrome in the name, I'm not laughing because this is funny. I'm just laughing because we've hit the end of our learning and we don't know it. We pretend we haven't, right? And it's just the human folly applied to medicine. It's still human folly. So that's why I'm laughing. With a syndrome, you've got a collection of symptoms that tend to point at a disease, right? What is that? Close enough. Anything that's named after a person, a doctor, famous doctor, a place, something with syndrome in it, right? Those are kind of red flags that your diagnosis isn't fully understood, that we've hit our limit of understanding, right? But there's more beyond it. Oftentimes it comes down to some hidden pathogens or something like that we haven't understood, or most times it comes down to the ignorance of the whole system. Meaning, if we're just looking at the human being and saying, okay, well, this is a disease in your body, right? So we're going to look at that, and that's our paradigm. That's where we limit our discussion. Then we ignore all the other things like the food you're putting into your body, or the quality of your relationships, or what your living environment's like. Is it damp? Is there mold, right? Do you live near Lyme, Connecticut, and you've been covered in ticks your whole life, right? There are different factors that we can kind of start to patch information from that may be incredibly significant, but we have to look outside of one frame to do that. So you start zooming out, right? Is this a carrot cake? Is this a chocolate cake? Right? When we have little problems, let's say our cake is dry. Okay. Oh, this cake is too dry, right? It's so dry and I don't like it, right? That's the problem. We need to diagnose that. So we need to fix it, right? That's the deal. So we start looking and going, okay, well, we need to diagnose it first. So is it a carrot cake that's too dry? Is it a chocolate cake that's too dry? Is it a vanilla cake that's too dry, right? You have a complaint, you have a symptom. I have brain fog, I have chronic fatigue, right? The cake's too dry. I'm constantly tired. The cake's too dry. I can't think straight. The cake's too dry. I'm getting anxiety and I can't sleep. The cake's too dry. I haven't had sex in 10 years. I have no libido, right? All these symptoms. And we start looking, okay, you have all these symptoms. You got fatigue, you got brain fog, weird pains, right? Whatever the list is. Okay, well, can we call you a fibromyalgia? Can we call you a Lyme? Can we call you a mold? And we're so busy trying to figure out what to call you that instead we should be looking at what's this cake made of in the first place? The cake's dry. Is it a carrot cake? I don't care. I don't care what kind of cake it is. We need to start asking ourselves, what kind of factors make the cake moist? Eggs, milk, butter, right? Baking time, maybe baking temperature. I'm not a baker, right? But I'm sure most of you out here probably know more about cakes than I do, which would be good because we can take that high knowledge base you have about cake creation and we can transfer it right over so that you're not blind when it comes to your own body health, right? Same deal. We're diagnosing this. Cake's too dry, so we need to add more eggs or add more milk or cook it for less time or at a lower temperature, right? Whatever it is. I don't care if it's a carrot cake. I need to look at what we have in front of us and how we can modulate some of these proportions and ratios inside, because these are some of the hidden causes that are producing the end result symptoms, right? So there's this saying in Eastern medicine, which is where most of my background is, there's a saying for the same disease, different treatments, and for different disease, the same treatments. And it kind of points out this paradox because a lot of times people will come in with a different diagnosis, right? Like, oh, I've got fibromyalgia, okay, and I've got rheumatoid arthritis, right? And I've got Lyme disease, and I've got mold exposure. And you got these 4 patients, and they have these wildly different diagnoses, but their clinical presentation is similar All of them seem like they have the same underlying causes going on. So it's kind of like having a carrot cake and a chocolate cake and whatever. They're all too dry. And you know that they all need more eggs. And that's how you're going to influence the system. So you wind up giving similar herbs and similar treatment and similar recommendations to 4 different disease people, right? But then you can also have it the other way. So that's different disease, same treatment. But you can also have same disease, different treatment. Maybe we have 2 different mold patients come in, right? Or MS. I'm going to use MS for this one, right? Because this is actually really common to see this distinction. 2 different MS patients come in. One of them, very overweight, right? Having a hard time getting rid of weight, a lot of excess fluids, very tired, cold, right? But they have MS. The other patient has MS, tall, thin, hard time gaining weight or keeping weight on, running slightly warm, not sleeping well, taller, soft voice, right? So we have a separate MS patient. Same disease, totally different treatments. Okay, in this case, one cake is way too wet and cold, right? So it needs to actually be warmed up and baked longer and have a little bit less eggs and a little bit less milk. And the other one is dry and slightly warm. So that one can actually use less baking, right? More butter, more milk in there, or half and half, or whatever you're using. I don't care about the name of the cake. Don't care. Doesn't matter. It's a great starting point. It really is. I shouldn't say don't care. I'm not 0%, but it's so low leverage. It's so low influence because once we got the name, sure, this is the disease they call it right now today. In 10 years, they'll probably be diagnosing this thing differently. Doesn't matter. A name is just a name. What's going on with these processes inside, right? Are you too dry? Are you too damp? Are you too hot? Are you too cold? Are you too contracted? Are you too expanded? Right? These kinds of questions start to become universal. And now you can start to look at all cake, right? All people, especially complex chronic, and start to see common patterns and then ways to differentiate these underlying causes. And I know there's a lot of practitioners watching this channel too. This is mainly a channel for people struggling with complex health conditions, right? That's what I've got this channel organized for, but I do know there are professional practitioners watching this, and I would encourage you to start thinking professionals in this way as well, because it will greatly enhance your patient outcomes. Greatly. It does not hurt at all. There's no downside to this except for the mental effort and energy it takes to start thinking this way about what's going on with the health of the person in front of you. So back to our regularly scheduled program here. Thanks for your patience with that little side announcement. So we have to look at these underlying factors. We just have to. And then you have to be able to translate this and go, okay, too damp, too dry. What does that even mean? Well, we can start looking at, just like we look at the ingredients going into the cake. What makes the cake more damp? Well, all the liquid stuff, right? What makes a person more damp? Sweet foods, humidity, right? It's not rocket science. All of a sudden now we're looking outside our body and going, oh yeah, you know what? I do eat a lot of sweet foods. What if I can eat less sweet foods? And then we can have a more scientific conversation about that, right? We're looking at phenomenon, just like baking a cake. But we could then have, as we now have more developing science that starts to understand what's going on here, we could say, yeah, well, it looks like, what's happening here is that you're holding on to weight. You have a hard time losing weight because you eat so much sweet food, it spikes your blood sugar up, and then you have a overcompensation, and then it drops, and then you get hungry again. And then through all this, it's signaling your body to store more carbs on your body in case you need it for the future, right? But you're going to store it as fat around your midsection. And that's how this is working, right? That's one thing, one piece. And you can do this for like every facet of somebody's condition as the science gets better and better and better. But it doesn't matter about the science and the reductionism as much as it matters about the things you can touch and affect in your life. Meaning, don't put the cinnamon roll in your mouth because it's actually feeding the pathogens, right, that are in your body. And maybe there's a fungal component, or maybe there's a gut dysbiosis, and you've got problems there where you've got creatures that are kind of controlling your appetite as it is because they can communicate to your brain. Did you know that, right? So they're in there talking to you, making you crave stuff. And when you give into the craving, you're feeding them what they want, and they're just going to continue making you more inflamed. Right? We have food sensitivities, food allergies. There's lots of different reasons for that. But one of them could just be mistaking the inflammation that comes from feeding a compost pile in your gut, right? Mistaking that for an allergy. It's still going to be inflammatory. It's still going to be hot. So different ways to look at things. I know I went on a few tangents here, but the main point is to start understanding that your body is not a complicated system. A complicated system is like a mechanical thing, like a watch or a car engine or something like that. Right? When something happens to my car, I take it to the mechanic. They look at it, they say, this is complicated. I say, yes, I know. And that's why I'm here, right? It's not simple enough for me. It's beyond me. But here they come, and they're going to take out the broken part, put in the new part, done. We don't worry about how that new part affects the whole rest of the engine. We just substitute it because it's like the same thing. When you take a medical paradigm like that and you look at the human body and people come in with all these complex chronic symptoms, right? All of it, the brain fog, the exhaustion, fatigue, the weird wandering pains, all this stuff, these mystery illness things, right? I'm inflamed, I'm swelling. You come in, you look at that and go, okay, well, I'm going to treat this like a car engine, and we're just going to try to find which part isn't working or which reduced molecule, right? Which micronutrient is it that you're deficient in? We're going to reduce the whole thing into one mechanical decision and then try to install that part, right? Take the supplement with the one tiny reduced thing, or take the pharmaceutical that's just the one tiny reduced thing, right? Or, you need a new hip or whatever it is, and we just put the part in. You're treating the body as a complicated system, when in reality, our human body is a complex system, more like baking a cake, meaning you can't just take a cake that's done and like take some of the eggs out, right? Through the process of becoming a cake, it's like a living thing almost, right? It becomes something else. You put all the batter in the oven and it becomes something. It's no longer eggs and flour. You can't just replace parts. So at the very least, we have to upgrade our thinking and our lenses around this, so that when we look at our human body and what's going on there, we're not trying to see it in a reduced way. We're seeing it as connected to all the things that it's connected to, which is like basically everything, which of course makes the job for the physician really hard, because now we've got 10,000 things to pay attention to. However, again, for the practitioners watching this, once you refine your clinical clarity and you start to develop algorithmic thinking and an order of operations, for example, taking somebody through healing stages of 1, 2, 3, 4 in order: immune, digestive, neuroadrenal, blood circulation. And then, if needed, boosting and supplementing, looking at hormones and that kind of thing, right? Once you develop that, you can take all the complexity and all the things that you think you need to be paying attention to, and you can actually stop getting overwhelmed by that, and you can organize it so that you know what you should be looking at right now based on what your body needs. Right? That's what we do. We start to look at a complex system and all the factors that influence it, and then we organize it so that all the factors aren't getting overwhelming. You can take a holistic approach, a whole systems approach, right? But be structured about it so that it doesn't just blow your mind, because it's easy to get your mind blown. It really is. That's why your body's a complex system. You have to recognize that. And that's why we have our stages, right? As I just mentioned, 1, 2, 3, 4 in order. That way we've spread out everything on the table, and then we've stacked it up in a way where you can handle it. We're having more of these conversations within our group. I've got a chat group. If you're struggling with a complex chronic health condition, you absolutely don't have to do it alone. You're invited to join our group. It's international. We're off the big tech platforms, which means I can speak freely and say anything that I like with integrity about all kinds of medical questions. You can come in there and ask me anything you want. Again, it's not medical advice, but it's questions about health, and I'll give you my perspective, right? So you can start to make up your own plans and your own decisions about how you're going to move forward and start healing, because you're missing out, and you know that. And there's a lot of fun that you can and should be having. And that's where I like to get people to, is when they're writing back talking about how much fun they're having now, traveling and going dancing and being able to say yes to things. So anyway, this conversation's all happening in our group. I would encourage you. I don't have comments here. I don't interact on YouTube too much because I'm in my group, and that's where I spend my time and my attention. So I would encourage you, if you'd like to have these kinds of conversations, or you have questions for me, or you want to just watch over my shoulder while I'm helping people from around the world go through the same kind of process, no matter what their condition is, right? We're treating the human body at a universal level of systems, right? If you want to be over my shoulder with that, it's just a great place to be. Lovely people, very positive, no complaining, no whining. We're all very forward focused there. It's just bright, sophisticated people that are all working to heal as best they can. So the applications here, if your application looks really good and you look like a good fit for our community, I will let you know as soon as possible. And we do fill up. I keep the group small and cozy so I can know who's in there and give good answers, right? Or good suggestions. And the downside is we tend to fill up. But the good side is, right, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Might be a month, might be 2 months. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel, like a video. This is one way of you telling the algorithm what you want to see, instead of just having to eat the scroll that it serves you. This is one more step towards independence. Let's get you feeling better. Cheers.